MSNBC is reporting tonight Trump's Department of Justice shut down an investigation into Tom Homan, according to multiple people familiar with the probe and internal documents reviewed by MSNBC. In an undercover operation last year, the FBI recorded Homan, now the White House border czar, accepting $50,000 in cash after indicating he would help agents who were posing as business executives win government contracts in a second Trump term. It's unclear what reasons FBI and DOJ officials gave for shutting down the probe, but a Trump DOJ appointee called the case a deep state probe earlier this year, and no further investigative steps were taken, sources say.
Bueno, señores, lo que acaba de salir a la luz es un verdadero bombazo. Tom Homan, el zar fronterizo, fue investigado por el FBI nada menos que por aceptar sobornos. Y ojo que no es cualquier cosita. Al menos $150,000 en efectivo de agentes encubiertos que se hicieron pasar por empresarios. Así es, amigos. En septiembre del año 2024, Tom Homan habría prometido que a cambio de esos pagos, él se encargaría de poder canalizar contratos millonarios hacia el eventual gobierno de Trump. Claro, si es que Trump regresaba a la Casa Blanca. O sea, estamos hablando de que prometió entregarles contratos gubernamentales. ¿Qué fue lo que hizo el FBI? Lo estuvo siguiendo, lo estaba grabando y vigilando cada movimiento. Así es, amigos. Y ojo, que tenemos datos muy pero muy interesantes. Ahora bien, lo más indignante de todo esto es que Kash Patel, como el nuevo director del FBI, puesto por Trump, y Pam Bondi, la fiscal general, decidieron cerrar esta investigación de la nada. La enterraron. Ahora bien, seguro muchos se preguntarán, ¿cómo es que sabemos todo esto? Bueno, pues, ¿quién destapó esta investigación? Periodistas del Washington Post y del MSNBC. En concreto, hablamos de la periodista Carol Leonnig. Confirmaron que existen videos del propio Tom Homan recibiendo $50,000 en efectivo por parte de estos agentes encubiertos. Pero bueno, amigos, para que podamos ver de quién estamos hablando, hay que recordar las barbaridades que decía este tipo en televisión. Por ejemplo, recordemos el 11 de julio de este mismo año, 2025, en Fox News, salió con que ICE no necesita una causa probable para detener a nadie. Si es que no se acuerdan, veamos primero ese momento.
Look, people need to understand, ICE officers and Border Patrol, they don't need probable cause to walk up to somebody, briefly detain them, and question them. They just need the totality of the circumstances, right? They just got through the observation, get articulable facts based on their location, their occupation, their physical appearance, their actions. Like a uniformed border patrol walks up to them at for instance, a Home Depot. And they got all these articulable facts, plus the person walks away or runs away. Agents are trained.
Luego, en el programa de Morning Joe, Mika Cesinski le hizo frente, ¿no? Y le respondió como pocos se atreven. Veamos esto.
I've done this show several times. Every time on your show, I speak with integrity, I speak with honesty, and I speak with facts. The bottom line is, because of all this false narrative, and you using the term disappearing people,
well,
is
that's
disgusting.
What's happened. That happened to the group that was sent to El Salvador.
U.S. citizens get arrested every day. U.S. citizens get arrested by police every day. Are they being disappeared? No, their laws are being enforced. They're being arrested. They're being put in detention because they committed a criminal offense.
Not like what you're doing.
Not even close. We're enforcing the law and arresting people here in violation of law that are public safety threats. That's not disappearing people. That's enforcing the laws of this country and making this country safer.
I thank you very much for explaining what ICE considers to be a danger and a criminal threat. Everybody understands the reality, and we appreciate your sharing that reality with us. And we would love the data. Border czar for the Trump administration, Tom Homan. Thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Y no olvidemos cuando él aseguró que Trump tenía autoridad ilimitada para mantener seguro el país. O sea, ¿qué significaba eso? Básicamente que podrían ir contra cualquier persona, aunque ésta no represente ninguna amenaza, ¿no? Y bueno, fue eso lo que llevó a que ICE detuviera gente en tribunales, en iglesias, en escuelas, estacionamientos, hasta en mercados y fábricas. Por ejemplo, aquí tienen otro fragmento para que refresquemos un poco la memoria.
The greatest nation on earth.
Is enough for that, or do you think it would
We'll
need to
see.
be longer?
President Trump doesn't have a limitation on his authority to make this country safe again. There's no limitation on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hellman.
¿Y ustedes se acuerdan cuando atacó directamente a Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pidiendo que la procesaran criminalmente solo porque ella informaba a la gente sobre sus derechos frente a los agentes de ICE? Pues bueno, miren lo que dijo en aquel entonces.
It's like AOC and others don't want ICE to enforce the laws that they enacted. She's a member of Congress. Let us enforce the laws you enacted. That's what we're supposed to do.
You can't go after her. Do you think others should?
No, I think I've asked DOJ, where's that line of impediment, of interference? Now, if someone stands in your way, prevents you from arresting somebody, put your hands on you, that's impediment. But what line is telling people to hide from ICE, not open the door? Where do you cross that line on impediment? So I've simply asked the Department of Justice, give us that line.
You have talked to them about this. That's what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Ahora bien, amigos, teniendo en cuenta quién es este personaje, volvamos a esta investigación. Todo esto empezó en el estado de Texas en el verano del año 2024, no hace mucho, el año pasado, cuando alguien, bajo pesquisa, reveló que Tom Homan estaba pidiendo plata, unos cuantos miles, a cambio de contratos si es que Donald Trump ganaba. El FBI, al saber esto, armó toda una operación encubierta y lo grabó recibiendo fajos de dinero en septiembre de ese mismo año. El plan de los agentes era bastante claro: esperar a que Trump regresara y que Tom Homan tuviera un cargo formal para poder atraparlo con pruebas más fuertes. O sea, una trampa, ¿no? Porque según la ley, alguien no puede ser acusado de soborno federal hasta que ocupe oficialmente un puesto público. O sea, estaban dándole seguimiento, pero bueno, sorpresa, ¿no? Apenas Trump volvió al poder en enero, sus aliados cerraron el caso. Y, bueno, lo descartaron como si fuese una conspiración del Estado Profundo. Pero bueno, veamos cómo lo ha explicado la periodista, que es la que reveló todo este escándalo, y es Carol Leonnig.
Joining us now is one of the reporters who broke this story for MSNBC, Carol Leonnig, MSNBC senior investigative correspondent. Carol, it is good to see you. Thank you for joining us with this incredible reporting tonight. Can you break down for us what you've learned?
Yes. What Ken Delaney and my colleague here at MSNBC and I learned was that in the summer of 2024, when Trump was running for office and Tom Homan was at his side on many a campaign trail event and basically publicly touting that he was going to be an important part of the president's border initiatives and in the administration, during that time, the FBI began hearing from the subject of another investigation that Tom Homan was soliciting bribes and doing so in exchange for promises that he would eventually be in the administration and be able to deliver and influence federal contracts to help those businesses that paid him. Now, what the FBI decided to do was have a series of undercover agents approach that intermediary and also approach Tom Homan. And our sources and an internal document that we reviewed show that the FBI recorded him receiving this money in September 20th in a meeting they arranged. This is all before Trump is president, but it is really interesting because they didn't go after Tom Homan. They happened to learn from another investigation that Tom Homan apparently had this scheme of making money by offering this.
Carol, incredible reporting that you and Ken did there. Can you walk us through what the response has been from various officials that you have presented this reporting to, whether it is at the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, or perhaps even the White House? What have you been able to learn from officials in response to this investigation?
Yes, the White House very quickly got back to us about this today. Kudos to them for that. And also Kaj Patel and Todd Blanche, the acting Deputy Attorney General, all issued statements to us in which they told MSNBC essentially that this was an improper investigation begun during President Biden's term, and that it was an attempt to go after a Trump ally, and they shuttered the case because they viewed it as lacking sufficient evidence to proceed. Of course, that is not at all how the FBI agents or the prosecutors working on this case viewed it.
Ok, amigos, legalmente los expertos dicen que ya existe todo el material para poder acusarlo de conspiración, porque literalmente lo grabaron con el dinero en la mano, con promesas claras de favores políticos. Pero políticamente, señores, lo que pesó fue la protección del régimen. Y claro, cuando MSNBC pidió explicaciones, el Departamento de Justicia de Trump salió con el mismo cuento de siempre, que no existen pruebas sólidas, que era un ataque político, que el verdadero problema eran los millones de ilegales y no los amigos de Trump. Mientras tanto, pues Tom Homan no ha respondido a las solicitudes de comentarios. Lo único que sabemos hasta el momento es que recordemos que se estuvo en la campaña junto a Trump 2023-2024, cuando entró al poder estuvo prometiendo organizar esta operación de deportación más grande en la historia del país. Pero ¿saben qué, señores? Aquí lo interesante es que esta no es la primera vez que la corrupción se está escondiendo bajo una alfombra con excusas baratas. Aquí tenemos un claro ejemplo, ¿no?, de cómo el poder se utiliza para tapar escándalos y proteger a los suyos. Pero bueno, amigos, no todos guardaron silencio. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez volvió a hablar tras las amenazas que le lanzó Tom Homan hace unos meses. Y bueno, vamos a ver qué es lo que dijo.
And when we first did one of these seminars, Tom Homan, the then acting director of ICE, said that he was going to threaten to refer me to DOJ because I'm using my free speech rights in order to advise people of their constitutionally guaranteed protections. And he may want to do it again today. And to that I say, come for me. You're going to have to come for me. Do I look like I care? Because the way that we guarantee in this moment, when people say, how do we protect against everything that's going on? How do we make sure that what can we do to prevent this erosion, all this stuff that's happening? We do it by exercising and using our constitutional rights. Our rights are use it or lose it. So we need to use it. And we need to challenge them. So don't let them intimidate you into thinking that you're doing something wrong by telling people what their actual legal constitutional rights are. There's nothing wrong about it and there's nothing illegal about it. And if they want to make it illegal, they can come take me. That's how I feel about it.
Y para cerrar también tenemos la reacción del gobernador de California, Gavin Newsom, sobre todo este régimen de encubrimiento y de abuso de poder. Vamos a verlo.
Unmarked cars. People en masse, people quite literally disappearing, no due process, no rights in a democracy where we have rights. Immigrants have rights. And we have the right to stand up and push back. And that's what we're doing here today. This is a disgrace. This is an outrage, what we have allowed to happen in this country. And I could not be more proud of this legislature, the legislative authors, to the community demanding more from all of us at this moment to push back. I'll be signing a bill, the first in the nation, saying enough. ICE, unmask. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
Ahí lo tienen, amigos. Otro caso más que nos muestra cómo Trump y sus aliados están utilizando las instituciones no para servir al país, sino para protegerse entre ellos mismos. Ahora bien, señores, el ataque en contra de la libertad de expresión y más aún en contra de la prensa acaba de subir un nuevo nivel luego del tema con Jimmy Kimmel. Solo quiero que se imaginen esto. Ahora los periodistas en el Pentágono están obligados a firmar una promesa que básicamente les prohíbe investigar. Y si no obedecen, van a perder su acreditación. Así de simple y así de brutal. Esto no es cualquier cosa, señores, estamos hablando del corazón del poder militar de Estados Unidos. Un lugar donde, bien sabemos, la prensa ha sido clave para poder exponer tanto abusos, guerras mal justificadas, decisiones que han costado miles de vidas. Pero bueno, ahora bajo Trump y su capricho con la censura, el Pentágono quiere transformar a los periodistas en simples portavoces del gobierno. Veamos de qué se trata.
The Trump administration is trying to make it even harder for reporters at the Pentagon to do their jobs of keeping us all aware of what the Defense Department is up to. NPR reports that going forward, journalists must sign a pledge not to gather any information, including unclassified reports, that has not been authorized for release. Those who fail to obey will lose their press credentials. Basically, don't do reporting. The National Press Club blasted the move, saying in a statement in part, quote, "This is a direct assault on independent journalism at the very place where independent scrutiny matters the most, the U.S. military." Joining us now is Kevin Barron, president of Elevation Global Strategies and former executive editor of Defense One. He's also the former vice president of the Pentagon Press. Okay, Kevin, this strikes me as the most insane press policy I've ever seen coming out of the Pentagon, and that has to say something. Basically, they're saying don't report on anything that you find out because you're reporting in a motion that literally would have prevented all of the great accountability journalism that has happened over the years about our country going to war.
Yeah, I mean, if this policy stands, it's the death of American journalism at the Pentagon. It's nothing less than that. I covered the building for, more than 15 years. You live inside that place. And, it's a special place. It's a very unique job for journalists, even in Washington, for lots of reasons. The Pentagon is America's military headquarters. So any reporter that works there, and it's a small number of reporters in the American media ecosystem who have ever been able to have the privilege of being a Pentagon reporter. It's a small press corps, and there's not a lot of turnover. And the people that work there know, trust me, they know, I know, the seriousness with the duty that they're given. By reporting on the military, you're reporting on not just the leadership, the political leaders, but the senior military leaders themselves. And all the way down the chain of command through every level of troop you can think of. And it goes not just from that building, but around the world. When you're on the Pentagon Press Corps, you travel to military bases. And in our case, back in the day, it was war zones, combat outposts, forward operating bases. You go to foreign embassies. You go to NATO headquarters. You go onto ships. You travel in military aircraft, nuclear command aircraft, helicopters. So many places where your life is in their hands and vice versa. It's a very symbiotic relationship. There's a lot of trust that's built and required in it. All that to say, no president and no defense secretary have ever come close to having any kind of problem with the press corps that would require anything close to restricting the press corps' movements and actions like this. It's just beyond comprehension.
Despite the outcry, Pete Hegseth has actually been boasting about this, doubling down on it. He posted on X saying, quote, "The press does not run the Pentagon, the people do." Is that true? So who represents the people in this equation? Is it Pete Hegseth, or is it reporters who come from all over the country who work hard to get the opportunity to get in there and ask questions on behalf of the communities they serve?
For one of the few times I'll say this out loud, Pete Hegseth is right. The American people elected this president, and this president chose this defense secretary, and the Senate GOP confirmed him. So this is the policy you get. It shouldn't be a surprise. You know, it would have been a surprise if they started with this back in February, but there have been a sequence of guidances that have come down from the defense secretary's office limiting press movements, targeting certain members of the press, certain organizations where they lost their seats, they lost their broadcast booths. All of these are moves that made it harder for reporters to report the truth, harder to get information that, like as Hegseth's statements say, is not pre-authorized and pre-approved. And like you said, at least harder to do journalism. So yeah, the Pentagon gets to set these rules, as do all the agencies. You know, at the State Department, it's different. The State Department, if you want to meet with someone and you're a reporter, or at least back in the day, maybe it's changed recently, you had to meet with them like at the cafe. You couldn't wander around the building wherever you want to, even on hallways, like you can at the Pentagon. You really can, if you until recently, if you have a Pentagon press pass, first of all, you've already been vetted to some level to get into the building and have that pass, and to have earned your job in the first place in journalism. But when you have that badge, you can walk all over the Pentagon. You can't walk into certain rooms that are already locked and have codes, or you need permission to go into, for sure. But it's actually part of the job of doing it. You have to walk around. I started as a Stars and Stripes reporter. You get there early in the morning and you would make the rounds, meaning you go from your desk in the press room to the Army Public Affairs Office, the Navy Public Affairs, the Air Force. You go around the building, and that's just the basic of reporting, to go talk to people, to talk to public affairs officers, and anybody else you want to who's willing to talk to you.
I was going to say that maybe the silver lining in all this is that you don't have to do the reporting, because Mike Waltz or Pete Hegseth will put you on a signal chat and they'll just report to you all the military plans, and then you can report on that. All right, joking aside though, the press here, right? And you know a lot of the journalists here, you know a lot of the news organizations, they're going to be under tremendous pressure. What, if anything, Kevin, can news organizations do to kind of push back against this? Do you anticipate any news organization or any reporter voluntarily submitting to these rules? And also talk about the other side of this, which is how the American military also benefits from having reporters that it has access to be able to give critical information to, and how detrimental this is to the military's ability to be able to have that trusting relationship with news organizations and journalists.
Sure. First, I don't know what anybody's going to do, but I was the executive editor of a newsroom for 10 years. I had, a dozen reporters working for me over different times. I would never in a million years sign that document. I would never in a million years, and neither would, I think, the publishers or the owners of my publication. I do expect there'd be lawsuits pushing back on it, but in the meantime, what are you going to do? The Pentagon came out with this guidance, and it's saying, once they have a couple weeks of going through, of issuing new passes, if you want to go pick up your pass, you have to sign that document. And they're giving you 5 days to consult with your counsel and make the decision. And after 5 days, that's it. You don't get to come into the building, which means if they have a press conference, do you have to sign that document for pre-authorization to be a part of a press conference for live breaking news that's on TV? Or you got to go back and write your story without getting it approved? I mean, no one's going to put up with this. And here's another question. What if there's a war? What if war breaks out again, and it's anything like in the old days of Iraq or Afghanistan, where we had to apply for embeds to go into war zones with military protection, and that system, which actually, and you could argue, worked out, okay in the end in a lot of ways. Yeah. But there's a million questions that we just don't know. But no, I don't expect that anybody would sign this, except the journalists there who are not really journalists, and they're not from real newsrooms. They're from right-wing media operations they've been granted building access. The other part of your question, I'll answer quickly, Ken, is, look, there's a long tradition in the military where senior military officers make it a point to tell the officers beneath them that they're not to treat the media as the enemy, and just the opposite. They're learned how to deal with the press because they enter public-facing jobs. These are, four-star generals and admirals who run aircraft carriers, or they're commanders of army bases, and they deal with the public in many ways, from flag raisings and ceremonies to serious political issues that they have to talk to. So, yes, there's a tradition where it's not only is it part of your job, you're trained to do it well, and you're trained to teach the force below you why that's important.
Señores, esto equivale literalmente a decretar la muerte del periodismo en el Pentágono. Piensen en todas las investigaciones que en el pasado revelaron verdades muy incómodas, tanto para demócratas como para republicanos. desde las mentiras sobre Irak hasta los abusos en Afganistán. O sea, con esta regla absurda, nada de eso hubiera salido a la luz. Y ojo que algunos defensores del trumpismo ya saltaron, diciendo que el pueblo eligió a este presidente y él pone las reglas. Pero a ver amigos, ese argumento se derrumba fácilmente. La prensa no trabaja para el presidente, trabaja para la gente. Los periodistas en el Pentágono están ahí para representar comunidades de todo el país, no para servirle el cafecito a Trump ni para repetir lo que quiere escuchar. Además, aquí tenemos una ironía tremenda, ¿no? El mismo ejército, que se supone que defiende la Constitución, ahora está restringiendo el derecho a la información. O sea, ¿cómo se puede justificar eso? No se justifica. Es simplemente control político, disfrazado de orden militar. Y no se trata solo de censura, señores, sino que esto también afecta a la seguridad nacional, porque cuando los reporteros pierden el acceso a estas fuentes confiables, lo que nos queda, ¿qué es? Pura propaganda. Dígame cuándo la propaganda ha protegido un país. Al contrario, más bien lo debilita. Lo que Trump está impulsando en el Pentágono, amigos, es un atentado en contra de la libertad de prensa, contra el derecho de los ciudadanos a saber qué hacen con su dinero y en su nombre. Si se permite que esto avance, señores, lo siguiente va a ser ver a periodistas convertidos en marionetas del poder, incapaces de poder cuestionar nada. Pero bueno amigos, ¿qué opinan ustedes? ¿Será que esto es un intento descarado de censura o creen que exista algún argumento válido detrás de esta medida? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete a nuestro canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.